floor is yours.
Worshipful Master,
Thank you.
and brethren all, this is both very much a privilege and an honor to be asked to address you this evening. I would share with you a short reading from the book of Joshua, and this story must surely be one of the earliest stories about monuments in history. From the 4th chapter. And it came to pass when all the people had completely crossed over the Jordan, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, Take for yourselves 12 men from the people, 1 man from every tribe, and command them, saying, Take for yourselves 12 stones from here, out of the midst of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's feet stood firm. You shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where you lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, 1 man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, Cross over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and each one of you take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in time to come, saying, What do these stones mean to you? Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be a memorial to the children of Israel forever. What a strange memorial that must have been. 12 large stones standing in a heap. Certainly seems strange. They had been taken from the Jordan River when Joshua and the Hebrews crossed en route to Canaan. God dried up the river so that they were able to cross over safely, just as he had done with the Red Sea 40 years before. And Joshua was instructed to leave the stack of stones as a remembrance for generations to come. When children yet born would ask their parents, What do these stones mean? And they would be told of God's mighty acts and be encouraged to reverence him forever. It's quite obvious from the Bible that remembering is something that's very important for us. And the Lord understood this. And he also understood that without these reminders, we're, as humans, very, very apt to forget. And I suppose the display of Post-it notes that we all have on refrigerators and on doors and below light switches are testimony to that. I noticed when I was seeking for a verse of Scripture to get a hint for something for this, that the words remember, remembrance, and memorial are found more than 230 times in the Scriptures. We memorialize men and events. Sometimes we name ships after them. I can recall a number of years ago getting a tour aboard the USS Eisenhower. And more recently, the USS New York was built with steel that was made or taken from the crumbled mass at the World Trade Center. It was melted and formed the bow of that ship, as was said, as a symbol of our unshakable resolve. The USS New York was built in the shipyards of New Orleans by a lot of the workers who had lost their homes during Hurricane Katrina. So here they were rebuilding their lives, rebuilding their homes, at the same time they were building this ship. And there are two other ships that were built as memorials to the 9/11 attack. The USS Arlington, built to memorialize the attack on the Pentagon, and the USS Somerset, built to memorialize the county not far from us where United Airlines Flight 93 crashed. The vast assortment of memorials, when you think about it, that across our country are somehow connected to wars. And then some things are made more to remind us of men. One of our Scottish Rite degrees memorializes the 4 chaplains who gave up their life jackets when the Dorchester was torpedoed. Their names were Methodist minister Lieutenant George L. Fox, Jewish Rabbi Lieutenant Alexander D. Good, Roman Catholic priest Lieutenant John P. Washington, and Dutch Reformed minister Lieutenant Clark V. Poling. When I was a kid, I had the distinct privilege to meet Clark Poling's father. And my first hearing of that story came not from the Scottish Rite degree, but from Dr. Dan. These 4 chaplains, when the ship was torpedoed, gave their life jackets to 4 very frightened people. They attempted to minister to the wounds of those that were injured, and they prayed for those who were afraid. And all the while knowing that their lives would be lost. And we observe the sacrament of Holy Communion to remind us of the sacrifices of Jesus. But it does more. It encourages us to lead better lives. And so does our fraternity. And if we hold only memories, then we've missed half the point of having them. A good memory not only helps us to hold on to something that is past, it possesses the power to help us launch into a future. Memory should lead, must lead to vision. We all have our time machines. Some take us back, and they're called memories. And some take us forward, and they are called dreams. Like Joshua, we've paused to remember some important men who have laid aside their tools for the craft and have entered the celestial lodge. Pause for me for a moment and let's take a look at this picture. As they approach the Grand Tyler, our brothers are hearing the sounds of the music coming from within the lodge, played by Brother Wolfgang Mozart. And glancing into the social room as they go past, we can see the refreshment committee hard at work. Here are brothers Frederick Pabst and Joseph Schlitz with some beverages. And in the kitchen, further back, we can see brothers Dave Thomas and Harlan Sanders hard at work, preparing a meal for the evening. We enter this celestial lodge and quickly notice brothers Walt Disney, Chet Huntley, Fred McMurray, and John Cameron Swayze engaged in conversation. Brothers Ben Franklin and Harry Truman are up in the east. While ready to assist them, brothers and generals Douglas MacArthur, Omar Bradley, and John Pershing. The lodge treasurer, Brother Henry Knox, is busy collecting dues from brothers John Wayne, Hoot Gibson, and Tom Mix, and listening to words of welcome from brothers Winston Churchill and George Washington. Our own brothers Stainbrook, Morgan, Sean, Robinson, Dusky, and Lindley. They're in some very good company, brethren. In fact, they are in some very illustrious company. But what about us here? Now, in this very room, what are our dreams and what are our visions? When we think about our departed brethren, what do we recall? How did they live their lives? What were their dreams? And what are yours? You know, dreaming sometimes gets us in trouble. Consider, if you will, that Noah had to leave his day job to build an ark, and Moses had to go back to Egypt where he was a wanted man, and David had to face a giant. Yeah, dreaming can sometimes get us into trouble. It sometimes involves taking risks. It's kind of like parachuting. You just don't sort of parachute. You are either in the plane or tumbling in free fall toward the earth until you pull the cord. Dreams don't become a reality until somebody is ready to take this leap of faith. Goliath would never have been defeated if David hadn't been willing to step up. And Peter never would have known the thrill of walking on water had he not stepped out of the boat. And we'll never experience the fulfillment of the vision that we have for our own lives and for our own beloved fraternity if we're not willing to take a risk. In addition to taking a risk, dreaming requires teamwork. Brother Flanigan is doing a fine job up here as master, but he has to have a good team. And speaking of team, you remember what was been referred to as the miracle of Q Creek? 9 miners trapped for 3 days, 240 feet beneath the surface in a water-filled mine shaft. They decided early on that they were either going to live or die as a group. This temperature, 55 degrees in that tunnel, would slowly kill them by hypothermia. So they decided that when one got cold, the other 8 would huddle around that person and warm them. And so on this would go, so that everyone stayed warm. And when someone had a weak moment, the other ones there pulled them up. And the result was they came out of that mine alive. They remained focused on making certain that they all survived. And they never lost sight of that focus. They never lost sight of that goal. They never lost sight of that vision. Something else about dreams. Sometimes we get distracted. It's sort of like the fellow that was talking about the importance of birding and describing the process that one needed to go to be a member of a bird club. And he started off by saying, now, you have to know all these things, and this is the equipment that you need to have. Oh, look at that calypso hummingbird. Have you ever seen such a beautiful, beautiful hummingbird? Got a little distracted. Do you recall the movie Chariots of Fire? I know you remember the music. Bum, 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 bum. You remember the great runner Abraham that had won many races. His coach always held up how disciplined he was. And he finally lost one race when he looked aside just before he crossed the finish line. He looked back to see where his closest competition was. And while he was looking back, his closest competition passed him. Life's full of distractions. And there are a number. Criticism and resistance. Opportunities. Every day, opportunities come along and have the potential to distract us from a long-term goal. And the third one, and probably the most difficult one to overcome, is fear. At some point or another in our pursuit of a dream, we want to turn around and run away in fear. Ask any past master what went through his mind right after he said the words, "I do." Ask any young groom if he has moments of fear when he says the same words. We think about the what ifs and we'll be afraid of failing. But we can't let fear distract us. We have to stay the course. We have to have the vision. We have to make our dreams become reality. Whether they're for each of our lives, for what we're going to do next week, or what we're going to do next year. But what we want Sunset Lodge number 623 to be 100 years from now, or 50 years from now. Or 10. And what can you do to help keep it viable, vibrant, and relevant? Sir Francis Drake prayed this prayer: disturb us, Lord, when we're too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we have dreamed too little, when we arrive safely because we have sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when the abundance of things that we possess, we have lost our thirst for the waters of life. Having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity. And in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wider seas, where storms will show your mastery, where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push into the future in strength, in courage, in hope, and in love. So mote it be.